rather than doing something technical, and rather than going into details, and rather than showing diagrams and stuff, I thought I tried to tell a few stories and talk about aspects of the open localization platform that are not necessarily technical. I think there's a lot of technology around already, and the technology is being developed, and that's going to happen anyway. We can contribute to that, and we can drive it a little bit more, and we can help it, but technology is happening. When I heard the Facebook story, what you did in 4 years, it's just amazing. You have, I don't know how many million users you have, but all of a sudden, you create a community, an online community in such a short space of time. So I think technology and new things are going to happen anyway. What is different, I think, and what is changing are a number of aspects, and I want to highlight those and discuss them with you a little bit. So I cycle, and somebody the first evening of just before the conference started gave me a good quote, which was, when cycling is easy, you're usually going downhill, and that, he gave me that quote in the context of, well, life is difficult. Things are sometimes difficult to manage, things are difficult to explain, and so the moral there really is, things are hard to move sometimes. Technology is hard to develop. It's hard to convince people, that it's not all about money if they have to justify that to their shareholders. It's hard to get volunteers to do voluntary work. It's hard to get translators to spend their weekends translating for NGOs and stuff. But that's sometimes a good sign that it is hard, because if it was easy, it would be boring and not challenging. But what helps sometimes if you cycle, and it also helps in life and in work, sometimes if you have a tailwind, if you have somebody pushing you, helping you along. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So, the open localization platform, in order to understand the background to that, it's important to understand and get agreement on some important points around localization, on the Information Knowledge Society and the requirements for the collaborative localization platform. And some of the points we've discussed already, and we can keep them short and sweet. So we all have heard people saying over the last day and a half that most localized because they want to make money. Initially, when localization started, it was shorter. Then now it's medium term, and maybe someday it will be long term. And the pressure on localizing things faster and cheaper and localize more material at the same time is growing. So the way to address this problem, as Schäler said this morning, is technology. In addition to technology, people have come up with this idea of crowdsourcing. And although we've heard different takes on crowdsourcing over the last day and a half, I'm convinced that there's also an idea there that crowdsourcing is something that is cheaper for us, that where we can penetrate markets that otherwise you could not penetrate. An example, a very obvious example, we had heard similar examples before that kind of underpin this, is that you get localized versions of almost anything in Danish or Norwegian or Swedish. But there's many more people in different parts of the world that speak languages, and there's no localization for those. There are big changes. So if you look at localization, you think, what has changed since localization started? The localization industry started in the early 80s, mid-80s maybe, when personal computing started, and people just went along and translated stuff. Then they realized that they were doing things again that they had done before, and there was a lot of repetition. So somebody came up with this smart idea of translation memories. And to my knowledge, since the mid-90s, maybe early 90s, not much, the earth-shattering has happened. That was a big change. Translation memories were a big change in terms of how people were doing their work, and everybody's waiting for the next big change, for the next disruption. What will change the way that people do localization? And I think it's nothing that you can kind of lay a hands-on maybe, but there's something very subtle. And those subtle things are the internet and digital content. And there's loads of it. You know, they're all of a sudden, you can access the internet from anywhere. Loads of people are connected. There's loads of digital content. Much, much more than anybody could ever dream to translate. And companies say that they can only localize maybe 10% of the material that they have. So there's 90% of content is there, and it's just waiting there to get localized to be translated. And that is different. And that did not exist before. There wasn't that much digital content available, and the connectivity wasn't there either. That's something that's happened over the last few years. And there's some examples here. We heard Daniel actually touched on that too before. Early this year, it was the first time that China's total internet population surpassed that of the US's. And 17% is the percentage of people in China who use the internet compared with 71 in the US. And the penetration in China is still much lower, so just imagine what happens if they just 5–10% more of the Chinese population get online. The other really stunning bit of information that I found was that there are about 280, well, probably around 300 billion gigabytes of digital data available, which makes, if you convert that into iPods, it makes up to 17 billion gigabyte iPods. So it's something, it's unimaginable. It's like, what's happening in the States in the financial sector. You can't grasp the magnitude of the disaster that's happening. And here you can, I can't grasp the magnitude of the amount of digital data that is available. There's more than 100 million blogs on the web, so there's loads of stuff that's just waiting there to be localized and translated and to be made accessible. Laurie talked about the information knowledge society. That's, if you want to characterize that, it's probably characterized by ubiquitous computing, instantaneous access to knowledge, internet everywhere, and not just one computer per child, but I don't know about if you have children or if you have brothers and sisters, but I don't think it's one computer per child, I think it's many computers per child. And the use of computers, and I forgot probably the two biggest sectors here, which is game and pornography, to left them out intentionally. But there are other areas here that are probably more important for your health than gambling and looking at pictures. Is healthcare, justice, finance, it's getting access to help if you need something to fix in your house, access to goods, information, and if you want to carry out research. 2 days ago, we watched a video by Doctors Without Frontiers, and I kind of thought I could play it again, but I won't because I don't want to keep you here any longer. But there was one quote in there which said, that access to medicine is not determined by needs or requirements, or it's determined by market forces. So pharmaceutical companies produce medicine and sell medicine for markets, where people have the money to pay for it. And this is something very, very similar, and it's the same thing. Localization is done for people who can pay for it, generally. But the similarities don't end there. Access to information and knowledge means progress, prosperity, and health. And if you turn that around, it means that lack of access to knowledge and information means lack of development, poverty, and ill health. And really, what localization can do if it's done is providing access to knowledge and information, and if localization is not done, it prevents access to knowledge and information. And that really means, and it's not, it's not airy-fairy, it means that lack of localization can kill. It's like a health warning on a packet of cigarettes. If you don't get access to the right information when you need it, you can die. It's as simple as that. So, we need to do a little reality check. First of all, mainstream localization efforts are not sustainable long term. The way that mainstream localization is being done at the moment is not sustainable. If you have heard over the last day and a half, or even 2 days and a half, that even large companies like Microsoft, Google, newcomers like Facebook, semantic, are all trying to change the model that they're working to get their material localized and translated. So this idea of crowdsourcing has been discussed, and this, maybe for the last year, this is one of the new buzzwords. When people talk about crowdsourcing, they talk, they mean different things. And many companies, I believe, when they say crowdsourcing, what they mean is, well, they get access to translators that they would otherwise not have access to. So they, set up an environment, and within that environment, they provide access to material that they want to get localized to people who volunteer to localize that, and they get something in return for it. But I think, that the success of those efforts is still going to be measured at the end of the day by the level of adoption and sales and market penetration. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's bad if that's the only driving force. And even for cold-hearted accountants, there's an argument here. That argument is that 4 billion people with less than $2 a day have a higher purchasing power than Japan, Germany, France, UK, which is combined. So there's many reasons, even for people who are very, very driven by financial gains to do something for people who are very little money. The other reality check is that, when we, and Laurie highlighted that and talked about, how containers and volunteers are helping NGOs and other people to spread the word. There's lots of material is available in English, and that has to be made accessible to people in poor countries. I've been involved in localization since '86, I think, and it took me about 15 years or so to realize, it just shows you how smart I am, that most of the localization effort is from English into other languages. So what does that mean? If you think about it. So you see things in other languages and you don't even know whether they are in other languages or whether they have just been translated into those languages or localized. And if you think about the way that localization is being done, and if you think about why is localization being done, it's being done to make money, so the cost of localization has to be kept low, which means that the country spend an awful lot on it, so adaptation is kept to a minimum. There's loads of things that that in the context of localization, I think that it's all one way, and that have an implication on our culture and the survival of languages. So localization and crowdsourcing and collaborative localization platforms cannot just support the effort of translating English into other languages. That would be a very, very big mistake and very, very short-sighted too. I came across this term of blowback effects. I don't know whether you've ever heard that. Blowback, I think it comes from weapons. So you shoot and you get a kind of a reaction that you didn't expect. So you won't really go in that direction, but you get a blowback reaction. So it kind of hits you back on your shoulder. And that happens in economies. So people do things, and they expect to have those things that they do have a certain effect, but the effect is actually different from what they expect it to be. So an example of that is that we believe that in the rich countries that we should go out and tell the poor people how to best organize their life, and what technology it is that they need. And it's really sometimes a little bit patronizing, and sometimes it's good work and it's needed, and we need to share that knowledge. But sometimes we go out and companies go out and sell things and share their technology, and what they get back is something completely different. It's something good sometimes, something new, and that is the blowback effect. So, for example, when mobile phones were introduced to Africa and in developing countries, or Africa is now, I think there are more users of mobile phones than the developed world now. They started to use the mobile phones not to make calls, but to pay for their shopping. They don't have credit cards and they don't have that much cash in their pockets, so what they did is they transferred credit from one phone to another. And that was a typical blowback effect, because that was taken up by a company in Dublin who developed the technology for people to pay for their parking meters with their mobile phone. And that's now being used all over the world in many, many big cities. So, you know, the idea that we go out to developing countries and help them to develop has sometimes the opposite effect. You know, we can learn from them if we listen to them and we see how they use that technology. So what we need to do with localization is also to enable people. You know, you have to make sure that localization happens both ways. You know, that if there is digital content, and you're going to hear about that in a few minutes. The case study or the things that are being done in Malaysia, in Sarawak, where localization efforts and language technology is used to help people share their own culture, their own language outside their relatively small communities. So technology is just one part of developing a local localization platform. You know, the biggest asset and the most valuable asset these days, I don't think is money. I think that in the last few years, if you talk to people, what it is that they value most in their business, it's not money, it's not shares, it's IP, it's knowledge, and it's not just knowledge, but it's knowledge that is protected. And you can look at that and investigate it and look at industries like the food industry, where their seeds are protected. They're really common things that you would think of, kind of part of our nature, all of a sudden have kind of a copyright almost on them. And the effect that will have in the future is just different to foresee. So if we are talking about developing open localization platforms, if you're talking about enabling people that don't have access to knowledge, if you're talking about trying to get access to their knowledge and allow them to share what they know with us and the other way around, then I think we have to talk very seriously about the ways that we're going to do this. So we have to talk about ownership, we have to talk about IP, maintenance, development, and there was a question that came up, is hosted services, for example, in the case of an open localization platform, not something very similar to open source, and it's not, because host is still owned by somebody, and if something is owned by somebody, they have the control over it, and they can decide what to do with it in the future. When we look about developing that platform, we have to make sure that it is not a platform that is dependent on any organization in particular. We have to make sure that it is open, that it's standards-based, that it's modularized, that it's interoperable, that people can pick and choose the components, the processing power, the type of applications that they need for their particular needs. And we have to enable them to use that technology so they can provide training and make that training accessible, affordable, and targeted at groups that need it. So the effect of the open localization platform is hopefully to provide some tailwind for those who need it, who need access to knowledge and to information, and who also have to tell us something, who have something to share with us. And there's a few pictures of how people use technology already, and it's sometimes quite sophisticated, and sometimes even more sophisticated than you would think it is. And my favorite picture is the one on the right-hand corner, and it's from India, and you can see people sitting on an elephant, and they're going to a little remote village, and what they're carrying. Have you seen that before in the picture? No. What they're carrying is an electronic voting machine. And if you're Irish, you'll understand the irony. Because in Ireland, the government tried to introduce electronic voting a few years back, and it was such a disaster that the machines that they purchased for millions of euro are still not being used. And I think just the storage of those machines was something like 12 billion a year. So there are guys, on an elephant in the jungle in India using electronic voting. So it's not a one-way thing. It's not